Ever find yourself tracking a package? Like watching that little icon move across the map. You click Buy Now, and it's on your doorstep like magic.
Right.
But today, we're diving into what makes that magic happen. And it's anything but magic.
Yeah.
A career path I bet most people haven't even heard of. The NVOCC.
Non-vessel operating common carrier. It is a mouthful, but way more interesting than it sounds, trust me.
That's why you're here.
Ah.
Our listener sent in a stack of info on this from RoleCatcher, and gotta be honest, I was a little clueless on what NVOCCs even do.
They're the masterminds behind global trade, the ones making sure everything gets where it needs to be.
So less about owning ships, more about...
Right.
RoleCatcher said something about travel agents, which is an interesting comparison.
Okay, so imagine a company in, let's say, Italy wants to get shoes, luxury shoes, to a boutique in New York.
Yeah.
The NVOCC is the one who figures out how to get those shoes across the ocean. The best way, the cheapest way.
So dealing with shipping lines, booking cargo space...
Exactly.
Sounds ridiculously complicated.
It is. It is. They're negotiating rates, navigating regulations, all the international stuff, making sure the shipment arrives on time, safe.
Hold on, you said international regulations. That sounds like a nightmare.
It can be. NVOCCs need to be on top of customs laws, import-export regulations, all that, and it changes all the time. One mistake, and a shipment gets stuck in customs. Costs money, costs time.
Okay, so not for someone who gets stressed easily. RoleCatcher also mentioned this bill of lading thing, and I gotta admit, I thought that was just another form.
Most people do, yeah. But it's actually a really important document. It's like a passport for the cargo. What it is, where it's going, who's responsible, legally binding contract between everyone involved.
So if something goes wrong, that piece of paper is everyone's best friend.
Exactly. And because NVOCCs issue it, they're taking on a lot of responsibility. They're guaranteeing those goods get delivered safe and sound.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure. So it's not just logistics, it's knowing the law, the money side of it. Every decision matters.
100%. That's why good NVOCCs have to have so many skills. Logistics, legal stuff, negotiating. It's a lot.
Okay, color me intrigued. What does an average day look like for an NVOCC?
Well, I don't think there is an average day, but RoleCatcher had a good breakdown of the main tasks and responsibilities, and it's all connected.
I do love a good puzzle. So where do we start?
One of the most basic things is buying and reselling cargo space.
Okay.
Remember that Italian shoe company? So the NVOCC is who they go to get space on a ship to New York.
So it's like one giant game of Tetris fitting all those shipments in.
That's a great way to put it. But it's not just about fitting things in, it's about making the most of that space, making sure it's profitable. NVOCCs have to be thinking about routes, what cargo they're putting together, fuel costs, delays.
So always thinking ahead, anticipating problems.
Exactly. And solving those problems, that's a big part of why people love this job. It's so engaging.
So less about spreadsheets and more about thinking creatively and solving those problems.
Right. And that actually leads perfectly into the next part. Those international regulations we talked about. That's where things get really interesting.
Interesting. Might not even cover it with those regulations. It's like you need a law degree to ship anything anywhere.
Well, maybe not a law degree, but you got to know what's going on. Tariffs, sanctions, safety standards, the whole 9 yards. And it can change like that.
So it's a constant game of catch-up.
Pretty much. NVOCCs are always thinking ahead. Gotta be. Trying to figure out what roadblocks are coming up and how to get around them.
RoleCatcher mentions some pros and cons of this job, and honestly, some of those perks sound too good to be true.
Like any job, it's a trade-off. High rewards, high challenges.
Let's start with the good stuff. Flexibility, right? That was the big one RoleCatcher mentioned.
Right. A lot of NVOCCs, especially if they work for themselves or a smaller company, they can kind of set their own hours.
No more 9 to 5. Where do I sign up?
Well, hold on. Remember all that stuff about deadlines and things going wrong? Flexibility sometimes means being around whenever your client needs you, no matter what time it is where they are.
Right, because when a shipment is halfway around the world, it doesn't really care what time it is where I am.
Exactly. But if you're someone who likes to be on the move and doesn't mind the occasional late-night call, that flexibility can be a huge plus.
Okay, so maybe not total freedom, but at least you're not stuck in an office all day. RoleCatcher also mentioned something about global exposure.
Oh, absolutely. Being an NVOCC, you're not just shipping stuff, you're connecting with people across the world. Every shipment has a story, and you're part of it.
I never thought about it like that. Like a tiny part of something huge.
Yeah. And that feeling of being part of something bigger, that's a big draw for a lot of people.
So we've got flexibility, global connections. What else is there?
Well, this one always gets attention. How much you can earn. Experienced NVOCCs, especially in management, they can make some serious bank.
Okay, now we're talking. Lay it on me. What are we talking about here?
I can't give you exact numbers. It depends on so many things. Experience, where you are, the company. But let's just say, if you're good at this, you can be very well compensated. It's a valuable job.
Okay, so it's competitive, high pressure, but the rewards are there. But what about the downsides? There's got to be some.
Right. So one of the toughest things, especially when you're starting out, is just how competitive it is. The industry is growing. Lots of people want those jobs, those contracts.
So you can't just charm your way in.
It helps, but it takes more than that. NVOCCs have to be smart. They have to be able to think strategically, stay ahead of the game, building relationships with clients, getting good rates from shipping lines, solving problems.
So like a strategist, a smooth talker, and a problem solver.
You got it. And that's not all. The work itself is demanding. Long hours, tight deadlines, always some new fire to put out. You got to be able to think on your feet.
Not your average 9 to 5 then.
Nope. This is for someone who works well under pressure, likes things moving fast, and enjoys a challenge.
Sounds like you need a decent amount of energy for this job.
That helps. And there's one more thing. RoleCatcher really stressed how important it is to keep learning in this field.
So even if you've been doing it for years, you can't just coast.
Exactly. Everything's changing, new technology, new regulations, world events that throw everything off. You have to be able to adapt, know your tech, be ready to learn something new every day.
Like training for some kind of logistics Olympics.
Pretty much. And that's what makes it so challenging and rewarding. You're always learning, always growing, pushing the limits of what's possible.
Okay, you've definitely sold me on the excitement. But how does someone even break into this industry in the first place?
That's where RoleCatcher's stuff on career progression comes in. They lay out a pretty clear path, starting with entry-level jobs that teach you the basics.
Okay, so entry level, what does that actually look like in the NVOCC world?
So imagine you're an operations coordinator. You're learning the ropes, helping out with shipments, getting a feel for how everything works. You're making sure everything runs smoothly.
I can see it now. Coordinating, dealing with paperwork. Sounds kind of chaotic in a good way. So what's next?
Once you've got some experience under your belt, you could become an operations supervisor. Think of it like being a conductor, making sure all the different shipments are moving like they should, managing the team.
So you work your way up from coordinating to running the whole show. Then what?
Well, if you're more into the strategy side, the next step would be operations manager.
Operations manager. Okay, now we're getting serious. What does that even mean for an NVOCC?
You're basically making sure the whole department is running as smoothly and efficiently as possible. It's not just day-to-day stuff anymore. You're making strategic decisions, coming up with plans, managing budgets, leading the team.
From the front lines to calling the shots, what's it like at the very top?
So RoleCatcher talks about this senior operations director position as like the ultimate goal.
Senior operations director? Yeah, that's got a nice ring to it. How do you even get there?
That's where all your experience comes in. All those years of learning the industry, knowing how to lead a team. You're working directly with the higher-ups, making connections, setting goals for the entire company.
So you go from shipping a few boxes to basically deciding where the whole company goes? That's amazing. But let's be real, breaking into this whole thing seems tough.
And that is where RoleCatcher comes in. They have some really cool tools and resources. They can give you a real leg up.
Okay, you've got to tell me more. What are we talking about here?
So picture this.
Yeah.
You're applying for a job, right? And you've got something that looks at the job description, figures out what skills they want, and tells you exactly what to put on your resume to stand out.
Okay.
That's RoleCatcher's AI CV builder.
Like having your own personal resume writer? That's wild.
It is. And it gets better. They've got this whole library of practice interview questions all about NVOCCs, so you can practice, get feedback, and go into that interview feeling like $1 million.
No more freaking out about those weird curveball questions. I love it.
Exactly. And the best part is, a lot of it's free.
Well, what are you waiting for? Go check it out. That about wraps it up for this deep dive into the world of NVOCCs. So if you're looking for a career that keeps you on your toes, connects you with the world, and has some serious potential, this might just be it.
Who knows, maybe this time next year, you'll be the one negotiating those deals, making sure things run smoothly, riding that wave of global trade.
I'm ready to sign up. But before we go, one last thing to think about. If you could be a part of any aspect of global trade, what would you do? It's a big question, but kind of cool to think about. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about connecting people and places. And that's pretty amazing. Thanks for joining us.